Good evening. Welcome. This is the After Hours Show. I'm Joe in Norway. I'm joined by Ann Lee, college professor and community member at the Daily Kos. She's a member of the National Council of Independent Scholars and is a contributor to the book, The Political Economy of Art, Making the Nation of Culture. Evening, Ann.
Hey, Joe.
Hey. It's episode number 50, apparently.
Oh my
We've
gosh.
been doing this almost a year.
Oh man. Oh, bizarre.
I'm sorry to be a little Eurocentric about this, but we typically have 4 weeks holiday, and I'm just wondering, I think keep going. We'll keep rolling.
Well, it's tough for those of us who like to actually research in Europe. August screws up with everybody on vacation in August.
So I thought this semi-special occasion, I would do something rare and bake for one. It's not really my cup of tea. Not too keen on it, but I thought I would do. Well, basically, I've got an engagement here coming up on Sunday, and I thought, as the token American, I'll make some traditional American chocolate chip cookies because wherever I've traveled abroad, I've never had them done properly. And these ones will be a little special since we only do vegetarian food here. So this is all vegetarian. And I've somehow managed to get a recipe that has quite the same texture and consistency. So we start with the main ingredient, some light brown sugar. We've got some white flour, got some bicarbonate soda and a little baking powder. And then we have a suspension of fat here, followed by the two key ingredients here, walnuts and dark chocolate. So when they don't sell chocolate chips here, it's not easily, you can't easily find them. So I usually just buy a decent bar of chocolate and then chop it up into random sized chunks, which I think is a little more little more unique. It gives you more unpredictable bites with every bite. But the key thing here, I know our friend James in the audience is looking at this, and it's just this fat suspension of sugar and refined flour. But the key ingredient you'll notice that's missing are the eggs. And instead of eggs, what we're using is a slurry of oats. So you soak oats in a little bit of water or oat milk or whatever, if you want to this oats and water, and then grind it until it becomes this kind of viscous substance, and that basically works. Somehow it's magical. And then just so that we get a little bit more healthy, I've added what's sometimes used, or not sometimes, but is used as the egg alternative, is ground up linfro, which is, I forget the English of this, flax seeds. So flax seeds, flax will give a similar kind of texture. Not as much. You put some hot water in this, and then I'll get that. And then major ingredient, aside from the chocolate, is salt. Very key to have some salt. I don't have natural vanilla because it's cost more than gold, so we've got some vanilla essence here, and that's basically it. So I just hope we've hit a rare heat wave here in West Norway, and it's to be honest, it's warmer than it's ever been in any summer, which is rare. So I hope it's warm enough for this to work easily, because I do not have a mixer. I've just got my hands. Oh,
Well, you could microwave it,
I
right?
got to work. If I had one of those, I could throw it in the oven, I suppose. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. That's about all I got. So if you want to take it away, I'll get cranking on this.
Well, let me just make a few minor comments. It has been a busy week. Lots of demonstrations on campus. Approximately 2,000 to 3,000 students have been arrested across the nation. So it's really not a groundswell in that particular sense. There's a whole business about identifying what counts as a radical or non-radical. I think there is this general set of police procedures that have begun to been used. Probably some encyclical by the Department of Homeland Security, and that is to sort of standard crowd containment. Although I think it would be interesting to see who in the UCLA Palestinian demonstration, who allowed the so-called counter demonstrators, essentially a group of thugs with weapons, to come in and sort of bash away at the encampment with no apparent intervention by police. And
they stepped away, didn't they?
Yes, the cops sort of backed up, and we're hoping for conflict of some kind, of gladiator sport.
And it should be noted that the demonstrations have been overwhelmingly nonviolent and peaceful.
Yes, I mean, it's nothing like what we might expect from an actual sort of anti-capitalist kind of event. It really has been a largely a negotiating. Depending on the university, there has been a good faith negotiations. In some cases, the universities made peace, essentially observed that it is appropriate to let students have a voice in talking about investment portfolio issues that the university has. And I don't think that it's that horribly problematic when you think about, yes, of course, you can make more money with certain types of military industrial complex stuff, but there are alternatives, and there is an entire social justice investment thing that universities could move closer towards. But this is that whole business model problem that some central administrators believe that they should run universities like businesses. And in a country that is actually democratic, it sometimes you can't really quite do that. And so the surge of sort of neoliberal, deregulatory privatization, private universities were different, and there have been issues about who chooses to demonstrate what the relationship between town and gown and city police or state police and private or public institutions, all complicated, made of course more complicated by the issues themselves. And there have been some critiques saying that a lot of this is because from a left point of view, you want to include a critique of divestiture and extend whether it is DEI principles or DBS, a whole variety of other interests are engaged in a divestment discourse, which is much more complicated, and in fact should have been at the front end of any particular campus protest. So there's a variety of other issues there. At Columbia, there are 13 or 14 non-Columbia affiliated people, that is outsiders, whatever, in the 120 or 30 who were arrested. So needless to say, the mainstream media has sort of moved forward by saying that this is sort of a massive outside agitator presence. Well, even Al Sharpton objected to the use of the word outside agitator because he recalled that, of course, in the 50s and 60s, outside agitators were always these people who were, come in from out of town to rile up our locals, whatever, in the civil rights struggle. So it's a kind of bad look for a lot of people. And of course, faculty have had a variety of responses. More unionized faculty have expressed sort of no confidence votes here and there. Columbia has a no confidence vote moving forward. These things don't necessarily, result in any particular decision making, and it's filled with a thing that we did spend several hours talking about. So that's kind of what's been going on. One of the underlying issues, of course, is the idea of having commencement, which is very complicated if you suddenly cancel it. It just makes everything uglier for institutions, especially smaller institutions. And so the institutions are, in one sense, are forced to make sort of more draconian decisions and relative to police action, et cetera. On the other hand, we have had these sporadic violence issues, but they're nothing like these. It's very incredibly minor when you think about it, and the total number of students arrested is fairly small relative to the nation. And then, of course, there's the underlying discourse of elite universities versus non-elite universities. It's fairly clear that if you look at the entire list of institutions, some are elite, but then there are some very non-elite institutions that have protested in the name of in favor of the Palestinians. So this is an interesting problem, needless to say. So that was part of this week. The other part of this week is Donald Trump's
trial. Before you move on there, one key issue about this is that there's a bunch of laws across the country trying to make this type of protest equivalent to inciting terrorism or supporting terrorists. Right?
Yes, it's framed against at a national level. The House has put forward a bill. It's the language police, as I've said, have become mall cops. This is, where anti-Semitism, you sort of the drop of the hat. It is something that will probably have some kind of Supreme Court scrutiny at some point. They've just, but people have moved forward for a variety of reasons, partially because some representatives have large Jewish populations, and so to put forward an anti-Semitism bill is popular. The problem is it can be abused in all kinds of ways, and it has built in it a variety of speech constraints. Let's put it that way. But pretty much no different than so many people want us to go back to the 1950s. we're in the 21st century. We should be able to get to some new position on speech rights in our little democracy. But on the other hand, this year's election is going to drive us towards the brink of these kinds of issues, because we have the one-day dictator and his 2025 plan of about 1,000 pages to literally screw up the entire country. Now, one hopes that the voters are going to be smart enough to make the same decision they did in 2020. And I think that they will, despite incredible attempts to subvert it. And it will be very clear that in the swing states, there will be shenanigans, let's put it that way, because some of the people who weren't arrested, aren't under constraint or sanction, aren't in jail, are still out there, and they still want this thing to happen. And of course, Mango Mussolini is certainly not willing to admit that he won't admit defeat, of course. And it's all kind of really sort of stubborn and stupid. But it has brought, at least a few laughs. The defense actually read into the court transcript a comment by Michael Cohen about Donald Trump being von Schitzenpants, which got picked up by CNN. Jake Tapper made fun of this, and of course, lots of giggling and amusement. But the fact is, the reality of it is that Trump wears diapers. He does, drop a load occasionally, and people have commented on his smell. So there's a subtext going on, and that we can giggle about. But the reality is, it's pretty. There are these other side issues that make the current trial interesting, more lively, I suppose. Today's result essentially was with Hope Hicks, his former director of communications in the White House, who actually paid her own legal bills for this particular activity. She was subpoenaed. She came in. She really didn't want to cause any more friction with her former boss than necessary, but she was under a lot of stress, and she broke into tears at the end. But what she did reveal, and what it is supported so far, and the various pundits who are sort of looking at this, the legal ones, have suggested that Trump is not winning this. This is the frame against which they want to sort of move their set of claims in defending him, have had an incredible number of contradictions. Trump was clearly aware of the effort to affect election results by suppressing certain kinds of information. It's nothing, spontaneous or whatever. There's clearly a conspiracy. It has conspirators. It has enough witnesses, a sufficient number of witnesses, and I think a fairly as well-designed an approach to try to create a felony conviction as possible at the New York level. The problem, of course, is that there are some flaws in it that could overturn it. But the reality, I think, will be that you'll probably have a conviction, hopefully a conviction, and that will have whatever election effect it will have. But once they convict, obviously there's a whole. This being a democracy, we have lots of other legal things going on here. So the pressure will be, of course, on Trump to try something else if he sees that he's going to lose. So there's all kinds of stuff that we have to be aware of before November, or as we discovered in 2020, even after November, because that's when the coup plot was sort of hatched, just after Trump lost. It's just an interesting phenomenon, and literally he's incredibly lazy. So the approach generally is the same as before. He's hoping for some intervention by some right-wing vanguard or something more insidious. I don't think that's going to happen. It seems fairly clear the military is not going to incite a coup, but still could happen. We never say never in our weird little politics. I think none of us expected January 6th to be what it was.
If I may interject here, little note on the cookie front. This is the oatmeal egg substitute, basically. So we've soaked the oats, and I threw in the I always forget the flaxseed for good measure. Blender on a stick, just get it into a nice little paste like that. Now, ideally, you would want to run this through a sieve or a mesh screen so that you just get the base of it. But since we're trying to inject a little bit of healthiness into these cookies, I'll just leave it. And mainly, I'm lazy. I'll just leave it as is. So that's basically our quote unquote vegetarian eggs for baking here. Don't call them oatmeal cookies.
I've tried to substitute applesauce for the egg, and that with moderate success. It just doesn't quite do the same thing as egg, but
I think this works well with the fat and the sugar to get crispy. Yeah.
But it is ultimately about the mixing of it. I think the blending issues. Yeah, I agree. Let me make a quick aside about Ukraine. They got their money. Weapons are being transferred. There was a brief little news blip that suggested that after the Orthodox Easter, which is coming up soon, there may be F-16s available. Well, they are available. The issue is whether Ukrainian pilots are sufficiently trained. I think there is actually several squadrons of fully trained Ukrainian pilots. But the issue, of course, is support for them, and ultimately there's some discussion about whether cadres of young pilots are being trained properly. There's a group being trained in France that's going to take about 6 months because it does take time. You need to start people off, and these are people with not so much flight training. They're going through and they're getting they have to fly in trainers a lot before prop trainers, jet trainers, and then the F-16 itself, and which has been described by Ukrainian pilots who have done the training after having been flying the MiGs and Sukhois, the Russian built planes. They're quite impressed and glad to have not only a better weapon system, but a faster and more agile airplane. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is that there's been more random missile and drone attacks on Ukraine. It still is at a fair clip in the northern part of the battle line area. The war continues and people are dying. And if you really like watching people get blown up, you can get a lot of this on the internet, unfortunately. There's a tremendous amount of drone warfare occurring, but there have been also advanced attacks by the Ukrainians into Russia and attacking things like refineries, drone factories, a variety of things. And the Ukrainians are actually quite interesting in the way they have taken on, and as I've pointed out in weeks earlier, but it seems there's more information about it. They've taken very small commercial airplanes, very small ones. They, I guess in the American genre, they'd be slightly smaller than Cessnas, a single prop plane. And they've been fitted with GPS and, everything that you need to run a drone. And so essentially you have these little planes that look like, a civilian craft, and they've been flying a fair amount of miles, like somewhere around 500 to 800 kilometers. and then dropping themselves on a variety of targets. The difference, of course, between the Ukrainians and Russians is that the Ukrainians hit military targets or infrastructure targets and never civilian targets. Well, not never. It depends whether they're doing some other kind of counter-terror attack of some kind. But anyway, that's been what's happening. The Russians have canceled some of their big parade stuff because, obviously they've got people engaged in this little war. The Ukrainians are trying to recover some of the people who fled Ukraine to Western Europe and who would be subject to conscription, because there is a full mobilization and conscription of everyone between 18 and 60 with the lower limit on in terms of a minimum from 27 to 25 years old. So that's another element of that. Other things are sort of coming into some clarity. The fact is there's attention being paid, or I did a thing this last week on the shadow oil tanker fleet that has been there since the beginning of the war. That is, there's a variety of oil tankers, not very good ones, but there's fleets of oil tankers and under very strange flagging, and they have disabled the transponders, so you sort of don't know what the ship is. And I would assert there are other ways.
This is for Russian oil.
Yes, Russian oil. They have essentially an entire shadow fleet of tankers running around, selling oil at a slightly higher price. There's a $60 cap, I think, on oil, and this is so that they can sell oil at a higher price in a variety of places. Now, there's not a full analysis of this, but there is sufficient information out there to see that there's an incredible amount of stuff out there running around, and it's disturbing. And I think it's pretty clear that, particularly since the summer is coming, that perhaps there'll be more enforcement. It is kind of wild out there. A Russian ship, I don't know if it's a tanker or something, got hit by a Houthi missile. They're not supposed to get hit by the Houthis are only attacking what they think are Israeli ships, but they managed to whack a Russian ship this past week. So this is things aren't always as they seem to be in this case. So that's been an interesting.
The cost of waging genocide.
Exactly. It is tough down there, though. I mean, you have a variety of things going on in terms of attacking all kinds of things relative to Israel, the Israel Gaza issue, which of course is there is a ceasefire proposal that's being moved forward, and the new location for meeting, I think, was Egypt. And it's proposed a 30 to 40 day ceasefire, and a lot of people are putting a lot of muscle behind this. It could happen, but it is, of course, a very tough thing because both sides are, extreme of gamesmanship, and obviously on the Netanyahu side, I mean, anytime this thing is over, he could go to jail. So this is pretty much parallel to the Trump problem in some ways. So that's
the Palestinians seem reticent, just from what I've read, possibly due to the fact that they want permanent ceasefire, and without the permanent ceasefire, what is the point? That Israel will just begin bombing.
They'll just violate it again, and they promised to attack Rafah. So it's just it's all very sad, and I think we're up to 34 or 37,000 deaths on the Palestinian side is just horrific. And the recent thing this past week, Israeli gangs hijacking Jordanian wheat shipments to Gaza. I mean, they just sort of attack the truck and they just destroy the food. It's just like, it sounds like they're bombing the truck. They're just destroying the food. And I'm going, to what end? I mean, it's just senseless in that particular. There have been a variety of other aid efforts. All of that is going on still, and not covered well enough, I think, in the mainstream media. And we have been distracted, of course, in the U.S. by the usual kinds of craziness in Trump land, and he whines about not being able to campaign. Well, in fact, he's taken several days off and played golf and done other things on his day off. So it all that whining makes no sense. Yeah, he was whining about this weekend, but the court's not in session on Saturday and Sunday, but he's just whining about it in general. So that's happening. And then, of course, Trump speeches in general have been, manipulating the truth as usual. And in terms of, there was a thing the judge mentioned that Trump claimed yesterday that he was being gagged to testify to give personal testimony. And the reality, of course, is that he's always able to do that. But of course, to claim that he's been gagged in terms of testifying is just insane. But it is how he wants to appeal to the base, and so that's happened as well. They're still moving forward. More witnesses coming up. They haven't really predicted whether Michael Cohen is going the kind of primary witness when he's going to be making his appearance. But we are in the second week of what will be a 6-week trial generally. And of course, other things that Trump has whined about, he actually got, an accommodation on. So, for example, there won't be court on the 17th because Trump will actually go to see son Barron graduate, and so that from high school. So that's another thing that's occurring. It is a busy time in that particular sense. The Congress is still at loggerheads about the same stuff. Essentially, Mike Johnson, our Moses, has not that he capitulated to the Democrats, but he recognizes that his ability to stay in power as Speaker is somewhat dependent on Democratic votes to prop him up in terms of resisting an attempt, because the right-wing Republicans had changed the rules in terms of how you can call for the ouster of a speaker. And in other words, they reduced the threshold upon which you could call for a vote to vacate. And Marjorie Taylor Greene has sort of suggested she really is going to move forward with this still, even though it's kind of an empty threat after about X number of days or weeks since she initiated this before the last recess. So we'll see.
Could you fill me in? I'm a little bit hazy on why this is going on. I mean, what could this milquetoast fella done in such a short amount of time that call for his ousting?
It's true. You don't need, but the fact is, as we saw with that other X number of days when McCarthy had gotten ousted, and they went through 2 or 3 different. They kept on going through speakers. It's kind of difficult. You have to get them to vote for one person or another, and then you see all this other kind of horse trading, et cetera. And the margin of the majority margin is down to about 1 or 2. So it's really much more complicated now. The thing is that it never could get to that before because it required a much more sort of bureaucratic details to sort of move the vote forward. And the radicals, the right-wing radicals, had decided to minimize the number of hurdles that you had to make. And so any idiot can, try to remove the speaker, which is pretty chaotic from the Republican side. And, all of these things were about votes. I mean, if the Democrats could gain back the House and retain the Senate, I think we'd be in really good shape. I mean, aside from winning the presidency, we do need to do that because simply the Republicans have sort of defaulted to some sort of sort of stalling as a kind of policy, which is not a very good policy. Nothing gets done. It is the most unproductive Congress in decades. So that's kind of where we are with that. Gee, those cookies look good.
Oh, I don't have a timer here. Can somebody set the timer for, it must be 2 minutes past 10 minute, 9 minutes?
9 minutes. It is 7:36 now. 9 minutes. 7:45.
7:45, okay.
It is 7:36 now. So at 7:45. Better close that door.
Oh, boy. I'm a little nervous. I doubled up the recipe. It's for an event, so I hope they're holding together here.
What temperature are you using?
This is 190. See?
All right, everyone get your calculators out. That's what is it in Fahrenheit? 375, we guess.
Yeah. 325 maybe.
Something like that. Just keep an eye on it. I mean,
Yeah.
Oh, that is the window to the door to your Warren. You have a comment.
The reason that the Republicans want to oust the speaker is because he gave the Democrats a win by
Yes.
doing something.
And the whole point is to not do anything.
Exactly.
He passed the Ukraine money.
Also, money for Taiwan, money for other
Israel.
things in Israel as well. So they caved, or he caved. That's it.
But I would assume they're all on board with Israel and Ukraine. It's just the Ukraine that they're against, no?
Yep. It's never really been about the money. I think the stocks of ammunition and stuff are really actually there. A lot of this is simply tactical stuff. The Ukrainians are waiting for the Russians to decide to attack. There's a 50,000 troop thing that they're putting together. It's likely going to be in the northern sector, Kharkiv and Sumy, and Kharkiv being the second largest city in Ukraine. But this is where they were driven back in sort of the last bit, well, the next to the last bit of assaults. So we'll see what happens. They do not have certain things. They're just running out of stuff, and we'll see whether they can actually make an offensive. And then the Ukrainians tend to not to be as quite as forceful about a certain type of attack. I mean, the doctrine is a good doctrine. I mean, it's really a swift, decisive, more focused than the Russian attack, which comes along a wider front. But the problem is, of course, ultimately it'll still be about air support and sufficient artillery, and depends where the Russians decide they're going to do this. Is all. It's not attrition warfare. It is going to be a maneuver war in that particular moment, and the Ukrainians rationalize it by saying, well, we just sort of have to wait for them to attack so we can, organize around it, because it is a 600-kilometer, whatever, front. So every day when you look at where people were fighting, it's about 10 or 20 places all along this very wide front. And it's very problematic because it has issues of surveillance and intelligence issues. Reconnaissance is really complicated. You've got a mess of drones sitting in the air, and we're up to the point, which is always quite fascinating, to look at drone on drone attack, a very small, drones attacking each other in midair, which is really quite strange. Oh, and the last couple of, I think since we last talked, the Ukrainians took a Soviet era Yak-52, which is a trainer that looks kind of like the American T-34. Lane's not here, so we can have this yakking about airplanes, but it's a training plane, and they managed to mount a machine gun on it and shoot down drones with the darn thing. So there's a lot of innovation or adaptation going on. The Ukrainians are pretty good at this, so but other things have been gone by the wayside where we talk about this sort of stuff. That is, last week there were a bunch of attacks on railway installations and energy infrastructure. So it just doesn't let up. Every day has some craziness going on, and civilians keep dying. The Odessa got hit last week, and it's just sad to watch. People getting hit by random shrapnel.
They lost a number of villages this week.
Yeah, several. There's a chain of cities that's along they're kind of hilltop cities from the Middle Ages. But the region there, they have associated villages that are part of the sort of a sprawl, as it were, from these cities. And it's in the sort of center part of the line beyond Avdiivka. And they keep losing it. Charivir, I think whatever it is called, is another city that's west of Avdiivka. And it is a kind of key point. It's a kind of hub. But the Ukrainians say they can afford to lose it. They're just not, that they have a kind of a flexible way of retreating. The Ukrainians, when you look at the gains and losses on the entire battle line, it really isn't more than about 10 to 20 kilometers for the last year. And I know that it sounds like not much happens, but there's stuff going on all the time. Drone attacks, tank battles, all kinds of strange little things are occurring, all with their own strangeness to them. And there are casualties. The casualties are about 1,000 a day for the Russians, less for the Ukrainians, but it's still bad. And then there's background stories against which this operates. It hasn't been very successful to have all those prisoners being recruited to fight for the Russian army. A lot of them just revert to being killers or crazy people again. And so lots of terrible things happen. I think a group of such soldiers killed their commander. Mutinies. How's that cookie look?
We'll see in one moment.
That's a nice big window, actually. Oh, they look fine.
Maybe a little too much bicarbonate soda. There.
Are they cooked all the way through?
Yep, they're a little underbaked. Perfect in the middle.
I'm hungry. Damn it. Yes, we're at 7:44. 8 minutes. 8-minute cook. 7:45 right now.
Okay, 12 minutes, please. 12-minute timer.
7:57. 7:45 now. 7:57. The next batch. So, and talking about things this week, the American economy is still going well. The Fed has not lowered interest rates, although there was some sort of hand waving about that. It's the usual kind of stupid game that is played with the Federal Reserve. The other politics that have occurred, what's his name? Henry Cuellar, the congressperson from San Antonio, who defeated a more progressive Democrat in the primary, has been indicted for 10 years of taking bribes from Azerbaijan. This is on the same lines of the senator from New Jersey. So the DOJ is working. If you want to climb onto the bandwagon that blames Nancy Pelosi for this particular issue, she put a lot of support behind Cuellar, and undoubtedly, and with all due respect, perhaps knew of this kind of corruption. I mean, 10 years, really. This is problematic. I mean, now whether the Republicans are going to make hay about this over this, who knows? But we'll see. John.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, as you did, that Nancy Pelosi was a big supporter of Henry Cuellar against the progressive challenger, as were other Democrats in the Democratic Party. And it's not like she didn't know this guy was corrupt. I mean, he's been doing it for 10 years. The guy is a corporate whore. He doesn't represent the people he's supposed to represent. He's in it for himself. Just a terrible example of a congressional representative. And yet the
Wasn't he
Democratic
the only
Party.
Business
the
as
only
usual.
Democrat who was a pro-lifer as well?
Oh, yes. And he's pro-life.
That too.
He's anti-abortion. Yes.
Oh, man. So this is, we'll see. This is only just broken, but in terms of the prosecution. So we'll see what's going to come of this. I think the Democrats could actually, do something with this, since it's fairly early in the election season. But we'll see how this operates relative to forthcoming votes. But since you're here, John, why don't you give us a little preview of Twilight Zone? We're going to be looking at some other stuff from India later on tonight as well.
Yes. Well, tonight we have two returning champions to the Twilight Zone, Lee Marvin and Joe Mantell, both of whom were in very good episodes earlier in the Twilight Zone's run. And they returned for this 5th season episode written by Richard Matheson. I'll just spoil it and say it's very good. At least I think it is.
Does Lee happen to have a singing part in tonight's? Got a dream boy, got a song.
Cat Blue.
Yeah, he may, Joe. Maybe I missed it on earlier viewings. I can't remember.
Is Harsh here? Harsh, you want to preview what you're going to look at tonight?
Yeah, yes, Professor. So tonight we'll see a documentary by Ananda Patwardhan. So he's the same director whose documentary I showed last time around, like last week.
Mm-hmm.
This documentary is called Vivek, or in Hindi, in English it means The Reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty interesting documentary. It's more like a call to action, and it shows like determination and the kind of fight that the underprivileged class is doing against, let's say, the rich, against casteism, against religious hatred. So it's split in seven parts. Like there's 7 incidents it covers. I'll just cover half of it actually this time around. It's an interesting piece actually, I would say. And just content warning, it's some disturbing views in it, obviously, and some stuff as well in it.
So is Vivek always pronounced Vivek?
Oh no! Oh, I didn't think of him. Yeah, he's a dumbass. That's a different. Yeah, his name means the reason, but yeah, he's unlike that.
Trigger warning. We got the. Let's see if it's
There
breaking.
we go. Well, it didn't snap, but
It didn't snap. Damn.
Looks tasty though. Besides, I prefer chewy cookies anyway. Yum. Yum, yum.
Well,
Six-
I think that's about it.
6 minutes to go. Yeah, it's about it. We'll try and do better next week without my sort of wandering around a week's worth of news all, sort of accumulated in my head. Oh, the last little bit was the official report on the only shot fired during the ejection of the clearing of Hamilton Hall at Columbia was apparently, and the description by the official description by the police was that the officer's firearm went off as they were changing hands. That is, changing the pistol from one hand to the other, a 9mm pistol with a flashlight on it. They had broken a window and were trying to stick their hand through to turn the knob, a locked knob, whatever, on the door. So in the transfer of the pistol from one hand to another, let's just think that this is unimportant. The idea of hand transfer from one hand to the other is actually, it goes all the way back to the Wild West. But anyway, so that's the claim, although it just sounds a little hinky. And more likely is that the officer may have used the pistol itself to break the glass, thereby releasing the single round that bounced off a wall and then hit the floor. No one was hurt, but you got to fill a lot of paperwork once you start firing these things. And on duty,
What, he grabbed it by the barrel and bashed it with the handle?
I have no idea, but it apparent these things do not. I mean, you can cold fire, one of these things, but it slam fire around, but it's just it's unreal that it would do that. What it does mean is that their finger came in contact, so assuming it's a Glock, with the trigger. It's just dopey procedure. But anyway, they shouldn't have drawn their pistol at all. So it was just a lame excuse, and I assume hopefully penalties will occur. Because the story is another one of those, oh, well, I only shot myself because I was cleaning it. Now, that is the lame, I mean, that's the standard art, story that emergency rooms get when people shoot themselves. So it was a totally lame story. And I assume that people, that's right, Travis, there is no safety. And it's well, anyway, on the one hand, it's no safety, but you can, a little piece of advice, everyone, you don't have to have a live round in the chamber, particularly if you're disarming and clearing a building where no one else has weapons. Anyway.
Harsh, did you have a question, or was that an old hand?
Yeah, no, so I had a question. So it's for Professor Ryan. So I think this started on Tuesday, right? Like Tuesday, I heard that some agitators. Yeah. They started it and cops didn't do anything, and on Wednesday they actually sided with the agitators. Then I guess. Okay. And they still arrested the students.
Well, everyone was acting decisively, but there was a clear breakdown in negotiations. It was fairly clear, actually. And I'm not blaming outside agitators or whatever. It's pretty clear that no one wanted to lose, and it's pretty clear that the upper hand is always going to be on the side of the university. So whatever. The police were called in, they did their job, cleared the building. Aside from that one random shot, which could have been horrible. I mean, it would have been horrible. James?
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back for a moment to talk about the whole Donald Trump, what he's and the not specifically about anything about the trial, which I have been following, but more about all the statements he's been making. And we would like to say, he says these stupid things and he lies and he does this. Something to remember, he's not talking to any of us. He is talking to his people, And he knows he has three very powerful networks, Fox, OAN, and Newsmax, who are going to carefully select out the things that he says and reinforce them positively. No one's ever going to hear, none of those people are ever going to hear that the judge said he has every right to testify. They're not going to talk about it. And he knows that everything he says goes through that filter to his supporters and to those listening. And I totally agree. They're insane, stupid statements, but he knows he can get away with the lies. And the reality is $1,000 per lie to break the injunction, whatever. That's just the cost of doing business. That's nothing. So I think we always have to remember who he's talking to when he talks.
So best propaganda or greatest?
What? It's
Greatest
good propaganda.
propagandist?
Yeah, he's a great propagandist, and he's fun and funny. And that can't be underestimated. I mean, I am very, very concerned about this election. We all think, and America's going to come through in the end. I am not so sure.
12 minutes, please.
What?
Timers. I need a timer for 12 minutes. Sorry, James.
7:57.
I like what you have to say about me, James. There's a place for you in my new administration.
Yeah, I wish. I just think we underestimate what's going on. And, I feel like and not to mention what's, everything happening. I mean, if things in Gaza aren't resolved by this convention this summer in Chicago, where the 1968 convention happened, we could have a repeat. That's all I have to say.
There is some anticipation of that. 8:09 will be when the cookies are ready, the next batch.
And on that note, we'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.
I'll try and do better. Thanks. Bye.
Yay.
Wow.